In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where alien empires clash and humanity struggles to find its place among the stars, there exists a universal truth that has echoed across countless worlds and civilizations: never judge a warrior by their appearance. What happens when the galaxy's most feared mercenary groups, elite alien special forces, and hardened space pirates all make the same fatal mistake? What happens when they encounter a small human girl who looks like she belongs in a classroom rather than a battlefield? This is the story of how one underestimated human reminded the galaxy why Earth's warriors are spoken of in hushed whispers across the outer rim. This is the story of Maya Chen, and how she turned the galaxy's prejudices into their greatest weakness. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the universe comes in the smallest package. Sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones nobody sees coming. The aliens thought they knew humans. They were wrong. The cargo ship Nebula's Edge drifted through the void between star systems, carrying its usual mix of legitimate freight and questionable passengers. Captain Zorax, a grizzled Kavarian with 4 arms and a reputation for asking no questions, preferred it that way. Credits were credits, regardless of their source. In the ship's cramped passenger bay, an unusual scene was playing out. Maya Chen sat cross-legged on her narrow bunk, a small data pad in her lap, completely absorbed in what appeared to be a children's game. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a plain gray jumpsuit that made her look even younger than her 22 years. To the other passengers, she seemed like nothing more than a lost college student trying to make her way home. The Gorlan mercenaries in the corner found her particularly amusing. "Look at the little human," rumbled Thrax, his massive frame taking up most of the bench. His rocky, volcanic skin glowed faintly in the dim lighting, and his 3 eyes focused on Maya with predatory interest. "What do you think she's doing out here in the frontier sectors?" His partner, Vex, was smaller but no less dangerous. The insectoid creature's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Probably running away from school. These humans send their young ones to learn in groups, like prey animals." Maya didn't look up from her datapad, but her fingers paused momentarily on the screen. She'd been listening to them for the past 6 hours, learning their patterns, their weaknesses, their assumptions. The Gorlans were typical mercenaries, hired muscle with more brawn than brains. They'd been contracted to eliminate a troublesome human operative on Kepler Station, though they didn't know her identity yet. She did. "Should we have some fun with her?" Thrax suggested, his voice carrying the kind of malice that made other passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats. The captain said no trouble on his ship, Vex replied, though his tone suggested he was considering it anyway. Maya finally looked up, her brown eyes meeting Thrax's central one with an expression of mild curiosity. "Excuse me," she said in perfect galactic standard, her voice soft and polite. "I couldn't help but overhear. Are you really mercenaries?" The question sent ripples of uncomfortable laughter through the passenger bay. Even the captain's first mate, a Zolonian with blue-scaled skin, shook his head in disbelief at the human's naivety. Thrax leaned forward, his massive bulk casting a shadow over Maya's small form. "What's it to you, little girl?" "I've never met real mercenaries before," Maya continued, her tone carrying the kind of innocent excitement that made several passengers cringe inwardly. "It must be so dangerous. Do you really fight in battles and everything?" Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly now, a sound that indicated either amusement or preparation for violence. "We kill people for money, human child. We are very good at it." "That's amazing!" Maya exclaimed, bouncing slightly on her bunk. "I bet you have all kinds of weapons and training. Have you ever fought other humans?" The temperature in the passenger bay seemed to drop several degrees. Everyone knew that humans had a reputation as warriors, but most assumed it was exaggerated propaganda. After all, how dangerous could a species be that sent children like this one wandering around the galaxy alone? "We've killed dozens of humans," Prax boasted, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet bay. "They're not as tough as they pretend to be. Soft. Weak. They break easily when you know where to apply pressure." Maya nodded eagerly, as if taking notes for a school report. "That's fascinating. What about human military? Have you fought them too?" "Human military is a joke," Vex chimed in, warming to his audience. They rely too much on their technology, not enough on natural strength. Take away their fancy weapons and they're helpless. Even their special forces? Maya asked, her eyes wide with apparent awe. Thrax laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Especially their special forces. We killed a whole squad of them on Proxima 7. They thought they were so clever, with their stealth suits and their tactics. But, when it came down to real fighting, they died just like everyone else. Maya was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Then, she smiled, and something about that smile made the Zolonian first mate take an unconscious step backward. That's really impressive, she said, her voice still maintaining that innocent tone. I bet you're both incredible fighters. The best, Thrax confirmed proudly. Better than anyone on this ship, Vex added, his compound eyes scanning the other passengers dismissively. Maya nodded again, then returned to her datapad. Well, thank you for telling me about it. I learned a lot. The mercenaries exchanged glances, slightly disappointed that their intimidation hadn't produced more fear. They'd been looking forward to watching the little human cower, maybe even cry. Instead, she seemed genuinely interested in their stories, which somehow made the whole interaction feel less satisfying. As the hours passed, Maya continued to appear absorbed in her game, occasionally asking innocent questions about various aspects of mercenary life. She learned that Thrax preferred close combat with his massive warhammer, while Vex specialized in ambush tactics with poison-tipped blades. She learned about their current contract, their payment schedule, even their backup extraction plans. She also learned that they had no idea who they were really hunting. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Attention passengers, we're approaching Kepler Station. Docking in 30 minutes. Please prepare for standard customs inspection. Maya closed her datapad and began gathering her few belongings into a small backpack. As she stood up, she stumbled slightly, catching herself against Thrax's massive arm. Sorry, she said with an embarrassed smile. I'm not very good at zero-G transitions. Thrax barely noticed the contact, too focused on preparing his own weapons for the customs scan. If he'd been paying attention, he might have wondered why the stumbling human's hand had briefly touched the concealed holster at his hip. The docking procedure was routine, and soon the passengers were filing through the station's customs checkpoint. Maya went through first, her innocent appearance and minimal luggage earning her barely a glance from the bored Centaurian customs officer. The Gorlans took longer, their weapons requiring special permits and documentation. By the time they cleared customs, Maya had vanished into the bustling crowds of Kepler Station. Thrax pulled out his communicator to contact their employer. We're on station, he reported. Beginning target acquisition. The voice that responded was cold and professional. Target is a human female, designation Ghost. Extremely dangerous. Do not engage alone, and do not underestimate her capabilities. Understood, Thrax replied, though his tone suggested he thought the warnings were excessive. Any description? Negative. No reliable visual data available. She's a ghost in more ways than one. Just remember, she's killed more beings than you've had hot meals. Be careful. As the Gorlans began their hunt, Maya was already 3 levels deep in the station's maintenance tunnels, having changed into dark tactical gear that she'd retrieved from a previously placed dead drop. The innocent college student was gone, replaced by someone who moved with the fluid grace of a predator. She pulled up a station schematic on her wrist display, marking the locations where the Gorlans would most likely set up their ambush points. They'd follow standard mercenary protocols, which meant they'd try to corner her in the commercial district where collateral damage would be minimized. They were thinking like hunters stalking prey. They should have been thinking like prey trying to avoid a predator. Maya smiled to herself as she began moving through the station's hidden arteries. The Gorlans had been right about one thing: this was going to be educational. Just not in the way they expected. 3 hours later, Thrax was growing frustrated. They'd searched every human-accessible area of the commercial district twice, questioned dozens of beings, and even hacked into the station's limited security network. Their targets seemed to have simply vanished. Maybe she's not on the station, Vex suggested, his mandibles clicking with agitation. Maybe our intelligence was wrong. No, Thrax growled. She's here.
I can feel it. What he was actually feeling was the sensation of being watched, though his limited imagination couldn't quite grasp that concept.
Maya had been following them for the better part of an hour, learning their search patterns, their communication habits, their blind spots.
The hunt was almost over.
She struck at 0347 station time, in the deserted cargo bay where the Gorlins had set up their temporary command post. Vex was monitoring the security feeds while Thrax cleaned his weapons, both of them confident in their ability to handle one human female.
The lights went out first.
Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in a red glow that turned the cargo bay into something from a nightmare. Vex immediately drew his sidearm, scanning the shadows between the stacked containers.
Motion sensors, he hissed to Thrax.
Nothing, the larger mercenary replied, but his hand was already reaching for his warhammer.
Must be a power fluctuation.
That's when they heard the voice, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You know, you were wrong about human special forces, Maya said, her tone conversational despite being completely invisible.
We don't rely on technology instead of natural ability. We use technology to enhance natural ability. There's a difference.
Both Gorlins spun toward the sound, but their target was already gone, her voice now coming from a different direction entirely.
Take stealth systems, for example.
Any species can build an invisibility field, but it takes human creativity to use it properly.
You're looking for me in the shadows, but you should be looking in the light. Thrax swung his hammer at empty air, frustration mounting. Show yourself, coward. A soft laugh echoed through the bay. Coward?
That's interesting, coming from someone who takes contracts to murder people for money.
Tell me, Thrax, how does it feel to be the prey for once?
Vex fired his weapon at a shadow that might have been movement, the plasma bolt illuminating the cargo bay in brilliant blue before dissipating harmlessly against a container wall.
You know, Maya continued, still invisible, I listened to your stories on the ship. About Proxima 7, about how easy it was to kill those human soldiers. I knew those soldiers. Good people. Friends of mine.
The temperature in the bay seemed to drop another 10 degrees.
They died because someone like you thought humans were weak. Thought we were easy targets. Thought our compassion made us vulnerable.
A small object clattered across the floor near Vex's feet. He looked down to see one of his own poison blades, though he couldn't remember drawing it, much less losing it. Sometimes compassion is a weakness, Maya's voice admitted, closer now but still impossible to pinpoint.
But sometimes it's the only thing standing between civilization and monsters like you.
Thrax roared in fury and began swinging his hammer wildly, trying to hit something, anything, in the red-lit space around him. Each swing met only air, and, with each miss, his movements became more frantic, less controlled. The thing about humans, Maya said, her voice now carrying a coldness that made both mercenaries' blood freeze, is that we're very good at learning from our mistakes.
Proxima 7 taught us that mercy is wasted on creatures like you.
The attack, when it came, was so swift that neither Gorlin saw it. Thrax felt his weapon torn from his grasp, then, pain exploded through his nervous system as pressure points he didn't even know he possessed were struck in rapid succession. He crashed to the deck, paralyzed but conscious. Vex tried to run, but invisible hands caught him before he'd taken 3 steps. His weapons were stripped away with casual efficiency, and he found himself on the ground beside his partner, unable to move anything below his neck.
The stealth field deactivated, revealing Maya standing between them. Gone was any pretense of innocent youth.
The person looking down at them was clearly a predator in human form, someone who had turned killing into an art form.
My name is Maya Chen, she said simply. Call sign, Ghost. And you just learned why humans don't send children to do their fighting for them.
She knelt down beside Thrax, her expression almost conversational.
We send adults who look like children.
It's much more effective.
The last thing the Gorlins saw was Maya activating her communicator to report mission success.
The last thing they heard was her arranging for their transport to a prison facility where they would spend the rest of their very long lives contemplating the dangers of underestimating humans. As Maya disappeared back into the station's crowds, now once again looking like a harmless college student, the galaxy learned another lesson about humanity. Sometimes the most dangerous warrior is the one nobody suspects is a warrior at all. News of the Gorlan mercenaries' capture spread through the criminal underworld like wildfire, though the details remained frustratingly vague. 2 experienced killers, veterans of 100 conflicts, had been taken down by an unknown assailant on Kepler Station. The only clue was security footage showing a young human woman boarding an outbound transport, her innocent appearance completely at odds with the devastation she'd apparently left in her wake. The footage eventually made its way to Admiral Kresh of the Hegemony Intelligence Service, a draconian whose species had spent the better part of 3 decades trying to understand humanity's military capabilities. Kresh studied the images with growing interest, his reptilian features betraying no emotion as he watched the seemingly harmless human disappear into the crowd. Interesting, he hissed to his aide, a nervous Centaurian named Vok.
Very interesting indeed. Sir? Vok inquired, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. This human. She doesn't move like a civilian.
Watch her gait, her posture, the way she scans her environment. Kresh replayed the footage in slow motion. She's military trained, but she's too young to be a veteran.
Where do humans hide their warriors? It was a question that had plagued galactic intelligence services for years.
Humanity's military records were surprisingly transparent, their armed forces well documented and monitored. Yet somehow, operators like the mysterious Ghost appeared with capabilities that far exceeded what their official training programs should have produced. The answer, as it turned out, was hiding in plain sight.
Maya Chin stepped off the transport at New Geneva Station, once again wearing her college student disguise.
To any observer, she was simply another young human returning to the prestigious Kepler University, her small backpack and worn textbooks suggesting nothing more dangerous than an overdue assignment. The university itself occupied an entire section of the massive space station, its gleaming towers and research facilities serving as a beacon of human intellectual achievement. Students from across human space competed for admission to its advanced programs, particularly the prestigious Sena Cultural Studies Department. Maya made her way through the familiar corridors, exchanging casual greetings with other students. To them, she was simply Maya, the quiet girl from Earth who helped with their alien linguistics homework and always seemed to have fascinating stories about her cultural exchange trips to various frontier worlds. Professor Sarah Martinez was waiting in her office when Maya arrived, the older woman's kind face showing no sign of the steel beneath her academic exterior. The office itself was exactly what one would expect from a university professor: books, research papers, cultural artifacts from a dozen alien civilizations. What visiting inspectors never noticed were the subtle security measures, the encrypted communication equipment, or the fact that Professor Martinez had once been Colonel Martinez of Earth Defense Intelligence.
How was your field study? Martinez asked casually, though her eyes held questions that had nothing to do with academic research.
Educational, Maya replied, settling into the comfortable chair across from the professor's desk.
The subjects displayed typical predatory behavior patterns.
Overconfidence, poor threat assessment, inability to adapt when their assumptions proved incorrect.
Martinez nodded,
making notes on what appeared to be a standard academic evaluation form. To any surveillance device, they were simply discussing Maya's anthropological research into mercenary culture.
Any complications with local authorities?
None. The subjects were delivered to appropriate facilities for further study. Local security was cooperative.
Excellent. Your thesis on predator-prey dynamics in galactic criminal organizations is coming along nicely. Martinez smiled.
I think you're ready for your next research project. Maya accepted the datapad that contained her new assignment, scanning the contents with professional interest. On the surface, it was a request to study the cultural practices of mining operations in the Vega system. In reality, it was an intelligence briefing about a human trafficking ring that had been preying on outer colony settlements.
This is a group project, Martinez noted. You'll be working with some of your classmates. Maya's eyebrows rose slightly. She usually worked alone. Marcus Webb from the engineering department and Jessica Liu from xenobiology. I think you'll find they have complementary research interests. Maya understood.
Webb was demolitions and technical infiltration.
Liu was biochemical warfare and medical support.
They were putting together a full tactical team for this operation.
When do we begin our research? Maya asked. Tomorrow. There's a university exchange transport leaving for the Vega system at 0800. Try not to miss any classes while you're conducting your fieldwork. As Maya left the professor's office, she reflected on the genius of humanity's approach to special operations training. Other species maintained military academies, specialized war colleges, institutions that were obvious targets for intelligence gathering. Humans had taken a different approach. They'd hidden their most elite warriors in plain sight, disguised as college students. The Kepler University Xenocultural Studies program was, on paper, exactly what it claimed to be. Students really did learn about alien cultures, really did write papers on sociological dynamics, really did graduate with legitimate degrees that prepared them for careers in diplomacy, trade, or research. What the university catalog didn't mention was that certain students learned additional skills. How to move through alien environments without detection. How to understand and exploit the psychological weaknesses of different species. How to eliminate threats with minimal collateral damage. Most importantly, they learned how to hide their true nature behind the facade of harmless academia. The next morning, Maya met her teammates at the transport dock. Marcus Webb was a tall, lanky young man with the kind of friendly smile that made people want to trust him. His engineering textbooks and student project cases concealed enough explosives and hacking equipment to level a small building. Jessica Liu appeared to be the stereotypical biology student, complete with specimen containers and portable lab equipment. Her cheerful demeanor and obvious excitement about studying extremophile organisms in asteroid mining environments masked the fact that she could synthesize toxins that would drop most known alien species in seconds. "This is so exciting," Jessica gushed as they boarded the transport. "I've been wanting to study vegan mining operations for months. The symbiotic relationships between different species in high-stress environments should provide fascinating insights into cooperative behavior patterns." Her enthusiasm was completely genuine, which made her cover identity virtually impenetrable. Jessica really was passionate about xenobiology. The fact that she was also a walking biological warfare laboratory was simply an added dimension to her education. The transport to the Vega system was a commercial vessel, filled with legitimate passengers, miners returning to work, trade representatives, actual university researchers. Maya's team blended in perfectly, spending their time in the passenger lounge discussing their research projects and reviewing their academic materials. What they were actually doing was planning an assault on one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the Outer Rim. "The primary facility is built into asteroid 47C, Marcus explained, his voice carrying the excited tone of a student discussing his thesis project. "The engineering challenges of maintaining life support in such an environment must be incredible. I'm particularly interested in their power distribution systems." Maya nodded along, though she was actually memorizing the facility's structural weaknesses. "And the workforce demographics?" "Mostly Rigelian miners, with Centaurian supervisors," Jessica added. "The physiological adaptations required for prolonged asteroid habitation should be fascinating to observe. I'm especially curious about the medical facilities they must maintain for such a diverse biological workforce." Translation: they knew exactly which species they'd be facing, and Jessica had already prepared appropriate countermeasures for each. The criminal organization they were hunting called itself the Asteroid Collective, and, on the surface, it appeared to be a legitimate mining consortium. The reality was far darker. They'd been kidnapping humans from frontier settlements, using them as slave labor in their illegal mining operations, then disposing of them when they became too weak to work. The galactic authorities knew about the operation but couldn't touch it. The collective operated in neutral space, beyond any single government's jurisdiction, and their lawyers were very good at exploiting legal loopholes. Military action would trigger a diplomatic incident. Academic researchers, however, could go anywhere in the name of education. "I'm so grateful the university arranged this exchange program," Maya said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "It's not often students get the chance to conduct primary research in such an authentic environment." "Oh, I know," Jessica agreed. "When Professor Martinez told me about this opportunity, I almost couldn't believe it. Real alien miners, working in actual asteroid facilities. It's like something out of a textbook." Several passengers smiled at the young human's obvious excitement.
It was heartwarming to see such academic enthusiasm, such innocent desire to learn about the galaxy's diverse cultures. They had no idea they were listening to three of humanity's most dangerous operatives discussing their next mission. The Vega system was a chaotic jumble of asteroids, mining platforms, and commercial installations. Traffic control was minimal, and ships came and went without much oversight. It was exactly the kind of environment where criminal organizations could operate with impunity. The collective's main facility was impressive, a sprawling complex of tunnels and chambers carved deep into the asteroid's core. From the outside, it looked like exactly what it claimed to be, a state-of-the-art mining operation. Maya's team approached in a small research vessel, broadcasting their academic credentials and expressing eager enthusiasm about their cultural exchange program. The collective security chief, a massive Rigelian named Thok, was initially suspicious but ultimately decided that three harmless human students posed no threat. It was the last mistake he would ever make. "Welcome to our facility," boomed Supervisor Vex, a Centaurian whose forearms gestured expansively as he led them through the main complex. "We're always happy to host university researchers. Your species' academic curiosity is quite refreshing." Maya smiled brightly, her recorder capturing everything as they walked. "This is amazing. The engineering solutions you've developed for maintaining atmospheric pressure in these tunnels must represent years of innovation." "Indeed." Vex preened, clearly enjoying the attention. "We've solved problems that have stumped the galaxy's best mining engineers. Our workforce efficiency rates are the highest in the sector." They passed through the legitimate mining sections first, where paid workers extracted valuable minerals under normal labor conditions. Everything was clean, well-lit, properly ventilated. It was exactly what visiting inspectors would expect to see. "And your workforce seems so diverse," Jessica observed, her scanner recording biological data. "How do you manage the different environmental needs of so many species?" "Careful planning and superior management," Vex replied proudly. "Each species is assigned to the work environments where they function most efficiently. Rigelians for the heavy excavation, Centaurians for precision work, humans for..." He caught himself before finishing the sentence, but Maya had already heard enough. Humans were being used for the most dangerous work, the jobs too hazardous for the other species. "For what?" Marcus asked innocently. "I'd love to include that in my engineering analysis." "Oh, nothing specific," Vex backtracked quickly. "Humans are just very adaptable. Now, let me show you our primary extraction chambers." The tour continued for another hour, with Maya's team playing their roles perfectly. They asked academic questions, took copious notes, expressed wonder at the collective's innovations. All the while, they were mapping the facility, identifying security measures, locating the areas where the human slaves were being held. That night, in their assigned guest quarters, they began planning their assault. 17 security checkpoints, Marcus reported quietly, his engineering equipment having scanned the facility's defensive systems. Automated turrets, force fields, the works. But the power distribution is centralized. If I can reach the main reactor chamber. Biological profile confirms 37 human captives, Jessica added, her medical scanners having detected human DNA signatures throughout the facility. Malnutrition, exhaustion, signs of physical abuse. We need to move quickly. Maya studied the facility schematics they'd compiled. The slave quarters are in the deepest sections, past the legitimate mining operations. They'll have minimal security there because they think no one can reach that far undetected. "When do we go?" Marcus asked. Maya checked her chronometer. 0300, minimum security shift, most of the legitimate workers will be sleeping. We extract the captives and eliminate the operation in one sweep. What about evidence? Jessica inquired. We don't need evidence, Maya replied coldly. This isn't a legal proceeding. This is a rescue mission and a message to anyone else who thinks humans make good targets. At 0300 station time, the asteroid collective learned what happened when you targeted humanity's children. The attack began with Marcus systematically dismantling their security network, his engineering skills turning their own defenses against them. Power fluctuations cascaded through the facility as he rerouted energy flows, creating blind spots in their surveillance grid. Jessica moved through the biological systems like a ghost, introducing targeted pathogens into the air recycling systems. Within minutes, every member of the collective was struggling with sudden respiratory distress, their strength sapping as her biological agents did their work. Maya went straight for the leadership, moving through the facility's corridors with lethal efficiency. She found Supervisor Vex in his private quarters, gasping for breath as Jessica's agents burned through his respiratory system. "You were wrong about humans," she told him as he collapsed to the floor. "We're not just adaptable. We're vengeful." By dawn, the asteroid collective no longer existed. The human captives had been evacuated to safety, their former captors left to contemplate their crimes in the facility's holding cells. The collective's financial assets were seized and distributed to victim compensation funds. Most importantly, word spread through the criminal underworld: humans were no longer easy targets. As Maya's team prepared to return to the university, she reflected on the effectiveness of humanity's unconventional approach to special operations. Other species would have sent warships, triggered diplomatic incidents, created years of legal proceedings. Humans sent college students who turned their enemies' prejudices against them. The galaxy was slowly learning that underestimating humans was a mistake that few beings survived long enough to make twice. Admiral Kresh had spent 30 years climbing the ranks of the Hegemony Intelligence Service, and, in all that time, he had never encountered a puzzle as frustrating as humanity's covert operations. The destruction of the asteroid collective had been attributed to internal conflicts and industrial accidents, but Kresh knew better. The same human students who had visited the facility as researchers had somehow orchestrated one of the most complete dismantlements of a criminal organization he had ever witnessed. The problem was proving it. Standing in his flagship's command center, the Draconian admiral studied the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. 3 more criminal organizations had suffered similar accidents in the past 6 months. In each case, human university students had been present shortly before the incidents occurred. In each case, the organizations had been involved in anti-human activities. "Sir," his aide Voke approached nervously, "the Hegemony Council is requesting another briefing on human military capabilities. They're concerned about these coincidences." Kresh's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile on a more pleasant species. "Coincidences? Yes, that's exactly what they are." His tone suggested he believed otherwise. "Tell me, Voke, what do we know about this Kepler University?" "Standard human educational institution, sir. They have exchange programs throughout the galaxy, student research projects, cultural outreach initiatives. Their graduates typically enter diplomatic or commercial careers." "Typically." Kresh savored the word. "And, yet our intelligence suggests that several individuals with confirmed connections to human covert operations have academic records from this institution. Perhaps humans simply recruit from their educated population, sir? Many species do the same." Kresh turned his attention to the main display, where a 3-dimensional map showed the locations of recent incidents. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable, a slow, methodical dismantling of any organization that threatened human interests. "No, Voke. This is something else entirely. Something much more dangerous." The Admiral had reached a decision that would change the course of galactic politics. If humanity was indeed using academic cover for military operations, then the hegemony needed concrete proof. And the best way to get that proof was to create a situation that would force these hidden operatives into the open. "Contact the syndicate," he ordered. "I have a proposition for them." Meanwhile, Maya Chen was attending what appeared to be a perfectly normal xenobiology seminar at Kepler University. Professor Martinez stood at the front of the lecture hall, discussing the social dynamics of hive mind species while 24 students took notes and asked academic questions. "The key to understanding collective consciousness species," Martinez explained, "is recognizing that individual decision-making processes are fundamentally different from those of autonomous beings." "Can anyone give me an example of how this might affect diplomatic negotiations?" Maya raised her hand. "Cultural context becomes crucial. What appears to be stubbornness or hostility might actually be the collective reassessing new information through thousands of individual perspectives." "Excellent point, Miss Chen.
This is why field study is so important for understanding these dynamics. The lecture continued for another hour, covering topics that would be useful for any student planning a career in interspecies relations. What the other students didn't know was that Maya and several of her classmates were simultaneously receiving coded intelligence briefings through their neural implants. The information was disturbing. Hegemony forces had been observed in secret meetings with the Crimson Syndicate, one of the galaxy's most dangerous pirate organizations. Intelligence suggested they were planning something major, something that would require immediate human response. After class, Maya made her way to Professor Martinez's office, where she found Marcus Webb and Jessica Liu already waiting. Their academic discussion of comparative xenosociology research methods was actually a mission briefing. The situation is complex, Martinez explained, her voice maintaining its professorial tone even as she discussed matters of galactic security. Our intelligence indicates that Admiral Kresh suspects the true nature of our program. The meeting with the syndicate appears to be an attempt to create a scenario that will force us to reveal ourselves. What kind of scenario? Jessica asked, her scientific curiosity genuine despite the deadly context. Unknown. But, given the syndicate's typical methods, it will likely involve threats to civilian populations. Kresh is betting that we won't be able to maintain our cover if innocent lives are at stake. Marcus leaned forward in his chair. So he's trying to force a choice between operational security and human welfare. Exactly. And he's not wrong that we can't allow massive civilian casualties just to protect our cover. The question is how we respond without confirming his suspicions. Maya was already thinking through the tactical implications. We need more information about their plans. Direct surveillance would be too risky, but what? Martinez prompted. A slow smile spread across Maya's face. What if we gave them exactly what they think they want? 3 days later, the passenger liner Harmony's Dream departed from New Geneva Station with a full complement of civilian travelers, including a group of Kepler University students on their way to an archaeological expedition on Rigel Prime. Among the students was Maya Chen, once again playing the role of an eager young researcher excited about studying ancient Rigelian burial practices. What the ship's other passengers didn't know was that the Harmony's Dream had been specifically selected by Admiral Kresh as the target for the syndicate's operation. Nor did they know that several of the university students aboard were anything but harmless academics. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The syndicate would attack the ship, take hostages, and make demands that would require human military intervention. When that intervention came in the form of elite special forces rather than regular Navy personnel, Kresh would have his proof that humanity maintained covert operations capabilities far beyond their official military structure. Maya and her team had intercepted the plan weeks ago and decided to use it to their advantage. If Kresh wanted to see human special forces in action, they would give him a demonstration he would never forget. The attack came on the third day of the voyage, as the ship traversed a particularly isolated region of space between star systems. 3 syndicate vessels dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began jamming all communications. The Harmony's Dream was completely cut off from outside assistance. Captain Roth, an experienced human spacer, immediately activated the ship's emergency protocols, but everyone knew they were essentially helpless. The liner's shields were designed to protect against cosmic radiation and minor debris, not military-grade weapons. Attention passengers of the Harmony's Dream, came the transmission from the lead syndicate vessel. This is Commander Vasek of the Crimson Syndicate. Your ship is now under our control. Comply with our instructions and you will not be harmed. In the passenger lounge, panic spread through the civilian travelers as they realized what was happening. Parents gathered their children close, elderly passengers looked around in confusion, and the university students huddled together in apparent terror. Maya played her part perfectly, clutching Marcus's arm with wide, frightened eyes. "What do they want with us?" she whispered, her voice carrying just the right note of scared innocence. "I don't know," Marcus replied, his own performance equally convincing. "But I'm sure the authorities will rescue us soon." Jessica was practically hyperventilating, her face pale with apparent shock. "This can't be happening. We're just students. Why would pirates want anything with us?"
Their performance was so convincing that several genuine passengers moved to comfort them, offering reassurance and protection to the obviously terrified young people. The syndicate boarding party arrived within the hour, 20 heavily armed pirates representing half a dozen species, all of them veterans of countless raids. Commander Vasek himself led the group, a massive Caltharian whose cybernetic enhancements glinted in the ship's lighting. "Listen carefully," Vasek announced to the assembled passengers. "You are now prisoners of the Crimson Syndicate. You will be held here until certain demands are met by your respective governments. Cooperate, and you will be returned safely. Resist, and you will die." The passengers cowered appropriately, some weeping, others praying to various deities. The university students clustered together in a corner, looking young and vulnerable and completely harmless. What the pirates couldn't see were the subtle hand signals being exchanged between the students, or the fact that several of them had already identified every weapon in the room, every exit route, every tactical advantage they could exploit. "You," Vasek pointed directly at Maya, "come here." Maya shrank back against her classmates, her terror apparently genuine. "Please, I haven't done anything wrong." "Nobody said you had." "But, you're human, and humans have a tendency to play hero." "I want you where I can keep an eye on you." Two pirates grabbed Maya's arms and dragged her to the front of the lounge, where Vasek could watch her directly. Her performance was flawless, the scared college student who had found herself in a situation completely beyond her understanding. "What's your name?" Vasek demanded. "Maya Chen," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm just a student. Please don't hurt me." Vasek laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Just a student. Yes, that's what you humans always claim. Just peaceful little academics who never hurt anyone." The insult was clearly directed at more than just Maya. Several of the pirates chuckled, enjoying the fear they were inspiring in the humans. "Tell me something, little student," Vasek continued, leaning down to bring his cybernetic face closer to Maya's. "What do you think your government will pay to get you back?" Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. My parents aren't rich. I'm here on a scholarship." "A scholarship? How touching." Vasek straightened up, addressing the rest of his crew. "Search the ship. Find anything valuable. And, if anyone gives you trouble." He drew his sidearm and casually fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Several passengers screamed, and Maya flinched convincingly. What happened next would be analyzed by intelligence services across the galaxy for years to come. The first indication that something was wrong came when the pirates searching the ship's lower decks simply stopped reporting in. Vasek initially attributed this to communication difficulties, but, after the third search team failed to check in, he began to grow concerned. "Koroth, take a squad and find out what's happening down there," he ordered his lieutenant. Koroth, a Regilian warrior with arms like tree trunks, nodded and gathered 5 pirates for the search. They disappeared into the ship's corridors with confidence, secure in their superior numbers and firepower. They never came back. By now, Vasek was genuinely worried. He activated his communicator, trying to reach his ships, but found only static. His jamming equipment was still functioning, which meant something else was interfering with his communications. "Sir," one of his remaining pirates reported, "the ship's life support systems are fluctuating. Engineering sections are showing multiple malfunctions." Maya continued to cower in her corner, but her eyes were tracking every movement in the room. Marcus was still playing the frightened student, but his position had shifted slightly to give him better access to 3 different pirates. Jessica appeared to be on the verge of fainting, though anyone with medical training might have noticed that her breathing pattern indicated enhanced oxygenation rather than hyperventilation. "This is impossible," Vasek muttered, his cybernetic eye scanning the room for threats. 20 heavily armed pirates don't just disappear. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting activated immediately, bathing the lounge in red light that turned familiar faces into sinister masks. The passengers huddled closer together, their fear now genuine as they realized something was going very wrong with their captivity. "Motion sensors." Vasek barked to his remaining crew. "Full alert. Something is hunting us." The pirates raised their weapons, scanning the shadows for targets that weren't there. Their thermal imaging showed only the heat signatures of terrified passengers, their motion detectors registered nothing but the normal movements of people trying to stay small and invisible. They never saw the attacks coming. The first pirate simply collapsed, his weapon clattering to the deck as he fell unconscious from a precisely placed nerve strike. The second spun toward the sound, firing wildly into empty air before joining his comrade on the floor. Maya was no longer in her corner. The transformation was so complete that several passengers didn't immediately recognize her. Gone was the frightened student, replaced by something that moved like liquid death through the red-lit chaos. Her academic clothes had somehow been replaced by dark tactical gear, and the small device in her hand was definitely not standard university equipment.
Impossible, Vasek breathed, his weapons tracking movements too fast to follow.
You're just a student. Maya's voice, when she spoke, carried none of the fear that had characterized her earlier performance.
No, she said calmly, I'm a human.
There's a difference. Vasek fired his heavy plasma rifle at where he thought she was, the blast illuminating the lounge in brilliant light. When his vision cleared, Maya was behind him, her hand reaching for the neural interface at the base of his skull. Sleep, she said gently, and the massive pirate collapsed like a felled tree. The remaining pirates found themselves facing not one opponent but several. Marcus had shed his own disguise and was systematically dismantling their equipment with tools that definitely hadn't come from any engineering textbook. Jessica was moving through the group with medical precision, applying pressure point techniques that dropped adult aliens faster than they could react. Within minutes, every pirate in the lounge was unconscious, their weapons confiscated and their threats neutralized. The civilian passengers stared in shock at the young people who had just saved their lives. Several children started clapping, thinking they had witnessed some kind of entertainment program. The adults knew better but couldn't quite process what they had seen. Are you really students? Asked an elderly Centaurian merchant. Maya smiled, her expression warm and genuine despite the unconscious pirates scattered around her feet. Of course we are. We just have a very comprehensive educational program. In the hours that followed, as human naval vessels arrived to take custody of the pirates and escort the Harmony's Dream to safety, Admiral Kresh watched the reports with growing amazement. His trap had worked perfectly, he had forced the humans to reveal their covert operatives in action. What he hadn't expected was how completely those operatives would dominate the situation. The official report would state that the syndicate attack had been thwarted by a combination of ship security systems and passenger resistance. No mention would be made of the 3 university students who had single-handedly neutralized 20 armed pirates in under 5 minutes. But Kresh knew the truth now. And he was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to appear harmless right up until the moment they destroyed you. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about the difference between looking weak and being weak. Maya-chan and her classmates were about to show them what happened when you underestimated a species that had turned deception into an art form. And, for Admiral Kresh, the real question was no longer whether humans had hidden capabilities. The question was how many more surprises they were hiding, and whether the galaxy was prepared for the answers. The Hegemony Council chamber had witnessed many heated debates over its 3-century existence, but few as intense as the current discussion about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Representatives from 12 major species sat around the massive circular table, their voices raised in argument while holographic displays showed the latest intelligence reports from Admiral Kresh. The evidence is undeniable, declared Councillor Thek, the Regelian representative whose rocky features showed deep concern. These humans have been conducting military operations under academic cover for years. They're making a mockery of galactic law. And what law, exactly, have they broken? Countered Councillor Yith, the Centaurian whose 4 arms gestured expansively. Attending university? Conducting research? Defending themselves when attacked by pirates? Defending themselves? Thek's voice rose to a roar. 20 armed syndicate raiders were neutralized by 3 students. That's not self-defense, that's a military operation. Admiral Kresh stood at the center of the chamber, his scaled form radiating satisfaction despite his carefully neutral expression. After decades of hunting for proof of human covert capabilities, he finally had the evidence he needed to convince the Council that humanity represented a clear and present danger to galactic stability. Honored counselors, he began, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years in intelligence work. The footage from the Harmony's Dream incident confirms what my service has suspected for years. Humanity maintains a shadow military far more capable than their official forces. These so-called students are elite operatives trained in advanced combat techniques. The main display activated, showing security footage from the passenger liner. In slow motion, the Council watched Maya Chen transition from terrified student to lethal operative, her movements too precise and deadly to be anything but the result of extensive military training. Look at this footage carefully, Kresh continued. Notice the tactical awareness, the professional weapon handling, the coordinated assault patterns. These individuals are not civilians who happen to learn self-defense. They are soldiers masquerading as academics. Counselor Vax, representing the Insectoid Scarl Collective, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. If this is true, then humanity has been deceiving the galactic community about their military capabilities. This represents a fundamental violation of the Military Transparency Accords. Exactly, Thek agreed. How many of these hidden operatives exist? How many other universities are actually training facilities for human special forces? We could be looking at thousands of covert agents scattered across the galaxy. The implications were staggering. If humanity had indeed been hiding elite military operatives as students, researchers, and cultural exchange participants, then they had achieved an intelligence penetration of galactic society that was unprecedented in scope. What do you propose we do about this? Asked Counselor Prime, the ancient AI construct that served as the Council's nominal leader. Admiral Kresh had been waiting for this question. We demand full transparency from the human government. Complete disclosure of their covert operations, immediate withdrawal of all embedded operatives, and submission to hegemony oversight of their educational institutions. And, if they refuse? Yith inquired. Then, we treat them as the threat they've proven themselves to be. Economic sanctions, travel restrictions, military containment if necessary. The debate that followed lasted for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The evidence was too compelling, the implications too serious. By a vote of 8-4, the Hegemony Council approved Admiral Kresh's recommendations. Within hours, the ultimatum was transmitted to Earth. President Sarah Chen had been expecting this moment for months. The intelligence reports from her own sources within the hegemony had warned her that Admiral Kresh was closing in on the truth about humanity's educational exchange programs. What she hadn't expected was how quickly the political situation would deteriorate once he had his proof. Standing in the Oval Office, surrounded by her top advisors and military commanders, she read the hegemony's demands with growing anger. They want us to what? She asked, her voice deceptively calm. Secretary of Defense Williams cleared his throat nervously. Complete disclosure of all covert operations, Madam President. Full access to our educational institutions. Withdrawal of any personnel they identify as military operatives. And, if we refuse? Economic sanctions immediately. Military action is implied if we don't comply within 30 days. President Chen set down the ultimatum and walked to the window overlooking the White House gardens. Earth had come so far since humanity's first tentative steps into galactic society. They had established trade relationships, cultural exchanges, diplomatic missions throughout known space. All of that was now at risk because they had been too good at protecting themselves. Madam President, spoke up General Torres, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, we can't comply with these demands. The individuals they're talking about aren't military operatives in the traditional sense. They're civilians who happen to have received enhanced training as part of their education. Try explaining that distinction to Admiral Kresh, the president replied dryly. The truth was more complex than either side was willing to admit. The Kepler University program and others like it weren't military operations in any traditional sense. They were educational institutions that prepared young people for the realities of life in a dangerous galaxy. The enhanced training, the covert capabilities, the ability to defend themselves and others in extreme situations, these were survival skills, not military weapons. But try explaining that to alien species who saw the galaxy in terms of strict military and civilian categories.
What are our options? President Chen asked.
We could comply partially, suggested Secretary of State Rodriguez.
Provide some disclosure, allow limited inspections, try to satisfy their concerns without completely compromising our programs.
Or, General Torres added grimly, we could tell them exactly what they can do with their ultimatum.
President Chen turned back to her advisors. And then, what? Fight a war against 12 major galactic powers because we refuse to explain our educational system?
If necessary, Torres replied.
Madam President, if we back down now, we'll be under their thumb forever. Every human in space will be subject to their oversight, their restrictions, their prejudices. We might as well surrender our sovereignty.
The president was quiet for a long moment, considering the impossible choice before her. Comply and lose their independence, or refuse and face the combined might of the hegemony.
Either way, humanity's future in the galaxy looked increasingly bleak.
That's when her secure communicator chimed with an incoming message from Professor Martinez.
Madam President, the message read, my students would like to offer an alternative solution to our current diplomatic crisis. Permission to proceed with an unauthorized field demonstration?
President Chen smiled for the first time in days.
General Torres, how do you feel about letting the kids handle this one? Meanwhile, Maya Chen was sitting in what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary coffee shop near Kepler University, having what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary study session with her classmates.
The casual observer would see nothing more than a group of young people reviewing their notes, sharing snacks, and complaining about upcoming exams.
The casual observer would be completely wrong.
So the hegemony wants to see our capabilities, Marcus said between bites of his sandwich.
They want proof that we're more than just innocent students.
Seems like they've already seen plenty of proof, Jessica replied, stirring her coffee thoughtfully.
The question is whether they're prepared for the full demonstration. Maya looked up from her datapad, where she'd been reading the intelligence reports about hegemony fleet movements. They're positioning forces at the edge of the Sol system.
3 battle groups, approximately 60 ships total. Probably just for intimidation, but they're taking this seriously. Good, said a new voice as Professor Martinez approached their table.
It's important that they understand the stakes.
She sat down with them, her coffee cup containing something that definitely wasn't coffee. The liquid inside glowed faintly blue, and the steam it produced carried the distinct scent of Rigelian combat stimulants.
I've just spoken with President Chen, Martinez continued.
She's authorized us to proceed with the demonstration.
Full disclosure, complete transparency, exactly what the hegemony is asking for. Maya raised an eyebrow. All of it? All of it. They want to see what human students are capable of? We're going to show them. Over the next several hours, the galaxy's intelligence networks began picking up unusual activity throughout human space.
University campuses that had seemed like peaceful centers of learning suddenly buzzed with purposeful movement.
Students who had appeared to be harmless academics began demonstrating capabilities that defied explanation.
At the University of Mars, a group of art students revealed that their sculpture project was actually a functional weapons platform capable of defending the entire campus. On Titan Station, the Marine Biology Department's research vessel turned out to be a state-of-the-art stealth ship equipped with sensor arrays that could track movement across entire star systems.
Most dramatically, Kepler University itself underwent a transformation that made Admiral Kresh's worst nightmares seem conservative by comparison.
The change began in the Xenocultural Studies Department, where Professor Martinez's students gathered for what they announced would be their final examination. Instead of the written test that other departments were expecting, the students began demonstrating practical applications of their cultural research. Maya stood at the front of the lecture hall, no longer bothering to maintain her innocent student facade. Her tactical gear was clearly visible, her weapons professionally displayed, her bearing that of someone who had seen combat on a dozen worlds. For my thesis defense, she announced to the assembled faculty and students, I will be presenting a comparative analysis of galactic military doctrine, with particular emphasis on the tactical advantages of cultural camouflage in asymmetric warfare.
The demonstration that followed was unlike anything in academic history.
Maya began by explaining how human exchange students had infiltrated criminal organizations throughout the galaxy, gathering intelligence and eliminating threats to civilian populations. She showed footage of operations that had been attributed to accidents or internal conflicts, revealing the careful planning and precise execution that had made them possible. Marcus presented his engineering projects, which turned out to be adaptive weapons systems and defensive technologies disguised as student experiments. His homework assignments had been detailed analyses of alien military installations, his field trips had been reconnaissance missions to strategic targets. Jessica's biological research took on an entirely different meaning when she revealed that her study of alien physiology had been focused on developing non-lethal methods of subduing different species. Her specimens were actually samples from defeated enemies, her experiments had been field tests of biological countermeasures. One by one, every student in the program revealed capabilities that made the galaxy's professional military forces look amateurish by comparison. These weren't soldiers pretending to be students, they were students who had been trained to excel in any environment, including combat. The implications were staggering. If this was what humanity's educational system produced, what were their actual military forces capable of? The demonstration was broadcast live to every major intelligence agency in the galaxy, including Admiral Kresh's command center. The Draconian Admiral watched in growing amazement as decades of assumptions about human capabilities crumbled before his eyes. "This is impossible," he breathed, watching a young human woman casually dismantle a simulated hegemony battlecruiser using nothing but standard university laboratory equipment. "No sir," his aide Voke replied quietly. "This is what we've been missing. They haven't been hiding soldiers as students. They've been training students to be soldiers." The difference was crucial. Military operatives could be identified, tracked, countered. But, if every human university graduate was potentially a covert operative, if their entire educational system was designed to produce citizens capable of defending themselves and their interests anywhere in the galaxy. "Sir," another technician reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the Sol system. Something's happening at Earth." Admiral Kresh turned his attention to the tactical display, where the three hegemony battle groups were maintaining their positions at the edge of human space. What he saw there made his blood run cold. The human defensive fleet that emerged from Earth's shadow was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships that appeared to be commercial vessels or research platforms suddenly revealed military-grade weapons and shielding. Space stations that had been catalogued as civilian installations activated defensive systems that put military fortresses to shame. Most unnervingly, every single vessel was crewed by young humans who looked like they belonged in classrooms, not command centers. "Admiral," came a transmission from the lead human vessel, "this is Captain Mayachen of the research vessel Academic Excellence. I understand you wanted to see our capabilities?" Kresh stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human force wasn't just matching his battle groups, they were completely overwhelming them. His ship's sensors were detecting weapon signatures and defensive capabilities that shouldn't have existed, deployed by crews that looked like they were barely old enough to vote. "This is Admiral Kresh of the Hegemony Fleet," he replied, his voice carefully controlled. "We are here to ensure compliance with galactic security protocols." Maya's voice came back calm and professional, carrying none of the fear or innocence he had expected. "Admiral, we are in full compliance with all galactic treaties. We are exactly what we appear to be, students conducting research into comparative military doctrine. Would you like us to demonstrate our thesis?" What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. Without firing a single shot, the human research vessels systematically dismantled every tactical advantage the hegemony battle groups possessed. Their communications were jammed, their sensors were blinded, their weapons were neutralized by countermeasures that appeared to have been developed as student projects. Within 30 minutes, 3 of the galaxy's most powerful battle groups had been rendered completely helpless by what appeared to be a university field trip. "Admiral," Maya's voice came over the comm again, "our thesis has been successfully defended. We hope your observations will prove useful for your own research into human capabilities. Have a safe journey home." As the hegemony fleet retreated in confusion and humiliation, Admiral Kresh finally understood the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. They weren't hiding secret weapons or maintaining covert military forces. They were something far more dangerous, a species that considered warfare to be an academic subject worthy of serious study. And their students had just earned perfect marks. 6 months after what historians would later call the academic demonstration, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new reality. The Hegemony Council's ultimatum had backfired spectacularly, revealing not hidden human military forces but something far more unsettling, an entire civilization that treated warfare as just another subject to be mastered through education. Maya Chen stood at the podium of the Galactic Relations Institute on Kepler Station, addressing an audience that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. Representatives from dozens of species sat in rapt attention as she delivered what was officially designated as a cultural exchange presentation but was actually the most important diplomatic address in galactic history. The fundamental misunderstanding, Maya explained, her tone carrying the professorial calm that had become her trademark, lies in how different species conceptualize education and capability development. The audience included Admiral Kresh, who had requested permission to attend after his fleet's humiliating retreat from Sol System. The draconian admiral sat stiffly in the front row, his reptilian features betraying no emotion as the young human who had outmaneuvered his entire battle group explained the principles behind humanity's approach to education. Most galactic civilizations maintain strict distinctions between civilian and military populations, Maya continued. Citizens learn civilian skills, soldiers learn military skills, and the two categories are considered mutually exclusive. Humans take a different approach. A holographic display activated behind her, showing a cross-section of human educational institutions. The complexity was staggering, traditional academic subjects interwoven with practical skills, theoretical knowledge combined with hands-on experience, civilian applications paired with defensive capabilities. We believe that in a dangerous galaxy, every citizen should be capable of protecting themselves and others. This doesn't make them soldiers, it makes them educated. The difference is crucial. Counselor Thak, the Regelian who had led the charge for sanctions against humanity, raised one of his massive stone hands. But, your students demonstrated military capabilities far beyond simple self-defense. They neutralized trained pirates, dismantled criminal organizations, defeated professional military forces. Maya nodded acknowledgement. True. But, consider the alternative. Should we have allowed those pirates to harm innocent passengers? Should we have ignored criminal organizations preying on frontier settlements? Should we have permitted hegemony battle groups to intimidate peaceful research vessels? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several alien diplomats shifted uncomfortably, realizing that they were essentially arguing that humans should have remained helpless in the face of threats. The problem, interjected Counselor Yith, is that your capabilities were concealed. You appear to be harmless civilians while possessing abilities that rival our elite forces. Maya's expression became thoughtful, almost sad. And therein lies the real issue, doesn't it? Not that we defended ourselves, but that we were underestimated. Not that we possessed capabilities, but that those capabilities were unexpected. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed footage from various recent incidents: the Gorlan mercenaries on Kepler Station, the asteroid collective slave operation, the syndicate attack on the Harmony stream. In every case, the aggressors made the same assumption, that humans were weak, helpless, easy targets. They saw what they expected to see, rather than what was actually there. Our greatest weapon wasn't our technology or our training. It was your prejudice. Admiral Kresh found himself speaking before he realized it. You deliberately cultivated that prejudice. You encouraged us to underestimate you. Maya turned her full attention to him, and he was struck by the intelligence in her young face. Admiral, did we ever claim to be helpless? Did we ever state that our students were incapable of defending themselves? Or did you simply assume that youth and academic pursuit equated to vulnerability? The question was pointed, and Kresh realized she was right. Humanity had never claimed to be defenseless, others had simply assumed it based on appearances. The truth, Maya continued, addressing the full assembly, is that human educational philosophy has always been holistic. We don't just teach our children facts and theories, we teach them how to think, how to adapt, how to survive and thrive in any environment. If that environment includes hostile aliens or dangerous situations, our education adapts accordingly.
Jessica Liu, now wearing the formal robes of a visiting lecturer rather than student clothes, joined Maya at the podium. From a biological perspective, humans are generalists. We evolved to adapt to changing environments rather than to excel in specific niches. Our education system reflects this evolutionary heritage. Marcus Webb appeared from the audience, his engineering expertise now openly displayed. Technically speaking, the systems we developed aren't weapons in the traditional sense. They're adaptive solutions to environmental challenges. The fact that some of those challenges happen to be hostile doesn't change the fundamental nature of the technology. Together, the three young humans presented a comprehensive picture of their species' approach to survival and development. It wasn't military doctrine, it was educational philosophy taken to its logical conclusion. What you're describing, Counselor Prime observed in its electronic voice, is a civilian population with military-level capabilities. The implications for galactic security are significant. Are they? Maya challenged. Consider the actual impact of human capabilities on galactic security. Criminal organizations dismantled. Pirate attacks thwarted. Illegal operations shut down. Innocent lives saved. Where exactly is the threat to galactic security? The question sparked heated debate among the assembled diplomats. Humanity's actions had indeed improved security throughout the galaxy, but the methods they used challenged fundamental assumptions about civilian limitations. The threat, Admiral Kresh said slowly, is to our understanding of military balance. If every human civilian is potentially a special forces operative, how do we assess relative strengths? How do we maintain strategic stability? Maya considered this seriously. Admiral, you're asking the wrong questions. Instead of wondering how strong humans are, ask yourself why strength matters. Instead of worrying about military balance, consider whether military solutions are the best approach to galactic problems. She activated a new display showing crime statistics, conflict resolution data, and diplomatic success rates across human-influenced sectors of space. The numbers were impressive: dramatic reductions in piracy, slave trading, and other criminal activities, paired with increased cooperation between legitimate governments and organizations. Human students have achieved in months what traditional military forces couldn't accomplish in years, and they've done it without starting wars, without massive casualties, without diplomatic incidents. Perhaps the question isn't whether our approach is dangerous, but whether traditional approaches are effective. The assembly fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just demonstrating superior capabilities, they were demonstrating a superior paradigm. Professor Martinez, watching from the gallery, smiled with pride as her students dismantled centuries of galactic thinking about education, military power, and civilian capability. This was exactly what the university program was designed to produce: young people capable of changing the galaxy through intelligence, adaptability, and principled action. What you're proposing, Counselor Vex clicked his mandibles thoughtfully, is a fundamental shift in how we think about citizen capability and responsibility. Not proposing, Maya corrected gently. Demonstrating. The shift has already happened, at least for humanity. The question is whether other species want to learn from our experience or continue operating under outdated assumptions. Over the following hours, the presentation evolved into an unprecedented exchange of ideas. Human educators explained their teaching methods, their philosophical foundations, their practical applications. Alien representatives shared their own approaches to citizen development, their concerns about human capabilities, their interest in potential collaboration. What emerged was a new understanding of what education could accomplish when freed from artificial limitations. By the end of the day, the Hegemony Council had voted unanimously to establish an educational exchange program with human institutions. Admiral Kresh himself requested permission to enroll selected officers in Kepler University's Xenocultural Studies program, recognizing that his fleet could benefit from the kind of adaptive thinking that human education fostered. Most significantly, the galaxy's perception of humanity underwent a complete transformation. No longer seen as newcomers to be managed or threats to be contained, humans were now recognized as innovators whose approach to education and capability development offered lessons for every species. Maya stood again at the podium for her closing remarks, looking out at an audience that had begun the day skeptical and ended it inspired.
The galaxy is a dangerous place, she said simply.
It contains hostile environments, aggressive species, criminal organizations, and countless other threats.
We can respond to this danger by building walls, maintaining armies, and accepting that civilian populations must remain vulnerable. Or we can respond by ensuring that every citizen is educated, capable, and empowered to protect themselves and others. She paused, letting the words sink in.
Humanity chose the second path. We don't see education and capability as contradictory, we see them as complementary.
We don't view civilian and military skills as mutually exclusive, we see them as part of a complete education. Most importantly, we don't accept that young people must choose between being students and being capable of defending themselves. The applause that followed was not just polite diplomatic courtesy, it was genuine appreciation for a perspective that challenged and expanded everyone's thinking. As the assembly dispersed, species representatives approached human educators with requests for information, collaboration proposals, and expressions of interest in educational exchange. The galaxy had begun to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their refusal to accept limitations on what young people could achieve when properly educated. Admiral Kresh approached Maya as she gathered her materials.
"Miss Chen," he said formally, "I owe you an apology.
I spent years hunting for your species' hidden weapons, never realizing that your greatest weapon was hiding in plain sight."
Maya smiled, the expression warm and genuine. "What weapon is that, Admiral?" "Your children.
You arm them with knowledge, train them with experience, and send them into the galaxy confident that they can handle whatever they encounter."
It's terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. Not children, Admiral. Students. There's an important difference. Children are protected from the world, students are prepared for it.
As Maya walked away, Admiral Kresh reflected on the events that had brought them to this moment. He had sought to expose humanity's military deceptions and had instead discovered something far more remarkable, a species that had eliminated the traditional boundary between education and empowerment.
The galaxy would never be the same.
In the months that followed, the Kepler model of education spread throughout human space and began influencing alien institutions. Universities on dozens of worlds started incorporating practical capability development into their curricula. Diplomatic academies began teaching their students how to handle crisis situations. Even military institutions started adopting human educational methods. Maya Chen completed her degree in Xenocultural Studies, though by then, the degree seemed almost incidental to her achievements. She was offered positions with intelligence services, diplomatic corps, and military organizations throughout the galaxy.
Instead, she chose to return to Kepler University as a professor, helping to train the next generation of students who would shape the galaxy's future.
On graduation day, she stood before a new class of incoming